Here we go. Okay. All right, so we're all, good evening, Erin, and welcome. And I guess, Lauren, we're ready to start our meeting. So I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Board of Selectmen for August 30th, 2021. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right. Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of July 14th, 2021, July 19th, 2021, August 3rd, 2021, and August 21st, 2021?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments, changes, or amendments? Nope. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, great. Real quick update for the community. Hold on a second, just can't read this. Something's popping up here. Just real quickly, I think as we all know, Tropical Storm Henri fortunately missed us and had minimal damage and impact on Madison. I think our emergency operations team did a great job preparing what could have been quite catastrophic. And I think we also kind of went through and saw this as a good test run for future storms. And we're going to have an action after action meeting in another week or two to go through things that we think went well and where we need to improve, and perhaps come back with some recommendations. I will say that one of the things that was highlighted was the condition of our emergency shelter. And that's a topic that's going to be on the agenda soon because our facilities committee has spent a lot of time looking at our emergency shelter situation, is coming back to make some recommendations. And I will say that even if it was just one evening, we had about, I think, 6 people in total visit the shelter. There was a lot of issues that came out of that in terms of just our awareness of things that we need to improve and make things better. So, and that'll be one of many things I think that will come back to the board and talk about some improvements and investments that might need to go into projects going forward to make ourselves more ready for these types of emergencies. Because I'm sure that we all are aware, we're probably going to be expecting more frequency of these types of serious storms come our way. Madison continues to have a strong vaccination rate across the state, and 84% of eligible residents are vaccinated, 75% of total residents. We still have a population that's not eligible. So I think we've done a good job, but you can see obviously, the one grouping that's kind of on the lower end of the spectrum is the kind of 12 to 17 age category. So that would be our middle school and high school age students that have not been fully vaccinated yet. And interestingly, the 18 to 24 category, which I think you can see the impact of colleges requiring vaccinations, we're almost at 100% with all our 18 to 24 age group in town being vaccinated. So just some helpful and informative statistics. This is all available on the Department of Public Health website. The state is now requiring vaccinations for state employees, and also has required it for public school teachers, staff, and employees. Currently the town is looking at all our policies and we're watching cases, and we'll be making some policy changes potentially in the future, depending on the circumstances in town. So we're constantly reviewing and looking what other towns are doing and also what we feel is right for our community. And then I just want to make one other highlight. I don't know, I think Stacy might be on here, but this came in a few weeks ago, but the town was awarded a certificate of achievement for excellent in financial reporting a few weeks ago by the GFOA, which is a very prestigious organization. And I just want to highlight the incredible effort and work that our finance team, led by Stacy, our finance director, has done in doing this. It was highlighted that I think it was our 2020 report was had a high degree of transparency and excellence in it. And so I just wanted to point that out as a great achievement for her team. She's done a great job for us within that. And with that, I will turn it over to liaison reports and selectmen comments. Anybody have I know it's kind of quiet in August with other boards and commissions meeting. So if anybody has any updates they'd like to share, that would be great. Nope,
Everything's been
meetings.
quiet from the groups that I'm with.
Okay. Yeah, I know a lot of boards don't meet in August, so.
I can give an update for the Affordable Housing Committee, because
Okay, great.
that group has been meeting. So where we are in the process is Madison, as well as other towns in our area, and Peggy, you'll have to remind me what SCROG stands for, but it's our region, right? Our
South Central Region Organization of Governments, yes.
Okay. So we just say SCROG, and I was trying to figure it out. So help fund a study by a consultant that's in the making right now. So SCROG has hired a consultant and to put together a survey that's going to be aimed at residents of various towns to kind of find out what people's opinions are, what people believe to be true about affordable housing within our towns. The committee's been working really hard on kind of trying to work with the consultant to come up with a survey that sort of best would work for Madison, because this survey is going to be, like I said, it's designed for multiple towns. So that's something that we've been working on pretty diligently. The survey should be coming out in October. One of the tasks of the committee is going to be to try to disseminate and build awareness of the survey within the town so that we can get a good response. So just wanted to give a heads up that that's coming up, and we're really hoping that residents will take the opportunity to complete the survey so that we can, and this again is the purpose of this is part of the development of our affordable housing plan. That's the ultimate, our ultimate goal.
Okay, great. I know that's a lot of work has been done on that, and it'll be interesting to see once the survey does get kind of finalized and the town, your team decides to move forward on it, because I think it'll be great to hear from the public, about all this. Any other reports? No?
School started today.
It did.
Kind of a big deal.
Yep. I know. My kids got off and they both came back with smiles on their face. So great job, Madison Public Schools.
Right there.
I'm sure tomorrow morning they're not going to have smiles on their face, but it's definitely, and the nice thing is they do have a 4-day break after this. So because they get Labor Day and then they also get the next day, which I think is, I want to say Rosh Hashanah. So at least it's not a full on getting back into the thick of things. So, okay, well, I guess with that, then we can move on to citizens' comments. Lauren, do we have any hands raised?
There is one member with their hand raised.
Yep.
Go ahead and unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record.
Yes, hi. My name is Jim Ferenczi. My family and I live on Seaview Avenue. I'd like to make a few remarks tonight that will take about 3 or 4 minutes, if you'll bear with me. But before I begin, I'd like to just clarify that I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my family. I'm not speaking on behalf of anyone else or I'm not a representative of any group. So just bear that in mind. To get right to the heart of the matter, I just wanted to express to this group, my serious concerns regarding the recent rash of car thefts and car incursions in the town of Madison. In my view, this is an unfortunate situation. It's fundamentally about personal safety. It's not simply a matter of property or vehicle related theft. And at least in the short term, it doesn't seem like it's likely to go away on its own. And I therefore think it requires constructive action. As I hope the selectmen are aware, a group of concerned neighbors have been having discussions on this topic with the Board of Police Commissioners and with Chief Drum during the past few months. And by way of background, that kind of informal group of concerned neighbors includes representatives of Seaview, Waterbury, and Barbury, which those associations are comprise approximately 150 households, and also includes various other concerned residents from around Madison. To help frame the current state of play as I see it, I just want to make a couple key points. Number one, as I already said, we're increasingly concerned about these criminal groups that have been routinely targeting various Madison neighborhoods, both north and south of I-95. Several members of our group of concerned neighbors have been either direct victims of this sort of crime or criminal activity, or have otherwise had brushes or encounters with some of these criminal groups. During some of the discussions we've had, Chief Drum along the way has indicated that the Madison Police Department faces a variety of kind of real world budgetary and manpower constraints for dealing with these situations. And then finally, and I think this is really important, the people that I've talked to, both within our group and elsewhere, we all understand and appreciate that the situation is both complex and multidimensional, and it's got both a short-term and a longer-term aspect to it. And so in talking to people, we've thought about a handful of alternatives for trying to address this ongoing situation. And some of them include the following: increasing the Madison Police Department's presence in vulnerable neighborhoods during critical nighttime hours, conducting a lock it or lose it publicity campaign across the town of Madison just to try to increase community awareness. And then finally, potentially working at the state level, either alone or with other neighboring towns, to try to address the issue, whether that be improving family and juvenile social programs and support systems across the state, creating better educational programs and career opportunities for disadvantaged youth, and or reforming the juvenile justice system. Now, obviously, this last category of stuff is longer term and harder to envision exactly how it would impact Madison. But nevertheless, we do view it as being a multidimensional and complex problem, as I mentioned. Against that backdrop, my personal view, and I want to emphasize this is just one person's view, is that the alternative that's most likely to have an immediate deterrent impact, and one that, at least to me, would appear to be the most actionable in the short term, would be to increase the Madison Police Department's presence in vulnerable neighborhoods during critical nighttime hours, say 11:30 p.m. to about 5:30 a.m. So with all that being said, I would like to formally request that the Board of Selectmen do two things. Number one, act with all deliberate speed to address this situation. And number two, actively facilitate whatever recommendations come from the Board of Police Commissioners and Chief Drum regarding dealing with this situation. So in closing, I want to thank you in advance for your consideration of, and hopefully your active ongoing attention to, what I consider to be a very important matter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And just to highlight that, earlier I responded to your email that number one is I've had a lot of conversations with the police chief as well as the chair of the police commission about coming and they're the experts in this area. So making recommendation to us about what resources they need and how they need to be implemented. And so I am going to be organizing a joint meeting between the police commission and the Board of Selectmen next month to talk about this and to figure out how we deploy resources as quickly as possible to assist them. It has been an ongoing conversation. The department is also down just because of retirements, in addition to being understaffed to begin with. And so we do have a manpower issue right now, but I look to them as experts to make recommendations to us, and then we can evaluate that. But and this isn't the proper forum to get into a lot of detail on that, but thank you for your comments, Jim.
I agree. And by the way, I would say that the conversations that we've had to date, and Mr. Goldberg's as the liaison to the police commissioners has been part of some of those, if not all of them, have been very constructive. By the way, I would also say there may be, it's hard to know who's on this call. There may be other participants that have been part of those discussions and that may be on this call. I can't see them, so I don't know who's there. But there may be other people that want to speak up besides just me. But thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And with that, are there any other public comments right now? And there's also an opportunity at the end of the meeting to have public comment.
There is no one else with their hand raised.
Okay, great. To be continued. All right. Well, thank you very much. Moving on to item number 6. Discuss and take action on proclaiming September 4th through 11th, 2021 as a time of remembrance, a commitment to volunteerism, and community pride in the town of Madison.
So moved.
And actually, do I need to read the proclamation?
I'd be happy to read it, Peggy.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead?
Sure. Whereas the townspeople of Madison were so affected by the events of September 11, 2001, that they were moved to design a public ceremony of remembrance, one that has since been held on an annual basis. And whereas the citizens of Madison will come together on Saturday, September 11, 2021, in tribute to those who lost their lives and to the heroes who responded. And whereas the town of Madison will participate in the Days of Caring by encouraging participation in this commemoration, and to help make our community stronger by serving as volunteers within the community. And now, therefore, we, the Board of Selectmen of the town of Madison, do hereby proclaim September 4th through the 11th, 2021, as a time of remembrance, volunteerism, and community spirit pride, dated at Madison, Connecticut, this 23rd day of August 2021. Of course, it's now August 30th, but
Yes, that's right. We had a change. So I think we had a second on that. So any more discussion? But obviously this is a ceremony that the town is very proud of, that we hold on an annual basis. And I think being the 20-year anniversary, it'll be particularly meaningful for a lot of the community to attend. And so we look forward to seeing members of the town join us on the town green at 6 o'clock on September 11th. With that, all in favor, say aye.
aye.
Aye. Okay, great.
Aye.
All right, moving on. And this is following a little bit along the same lines. So discuss and take action on a proclamation honoring the Healing Field ceremony and the Madison Exchange Club. Bruce, if you want to do that one too.
Sure, but I don't need to steal limelight, Al, if you wanted to read it, or Aaron,
Aaron.
or
I don't think Scott wants to read it.
everybody's muted, so I'm just gonna grab the microphone.
Okay.
You're doing fine, Bruce.
I
You
have
need
it
to
in-
make sure, wait. You need to make sure you let the people know that I can't speak to them.
I know.
Wait a minute.
By design.
Yeah, clearly.
Whereas the townspeople of Madison were so affected by the events of September 11, 2001, that they were moved to design a public ceremony of remembrance, one that has since been held on an annual basis. And whereas the Healing Field began as a tribute to men and women who gave the ultimate sacrifice to our country since September 11th, 2001. And whereas the Exchange Club of Madison is part of a national network of volunteers serving Connecticut and the greater Madison-Guilford area through established programs of service focusing on personal and professional development, building a healthy society, and aiding Connecticut's families and children. And whereas the Exchange Club of Madison will hold a commemorative event during the 20th anniversary of September 11th on the Madison Green, displaying over 250 3-foot by 5-foot flags honoring victims of 9/11, veterans, COVID heroes, child abuse prevention, fallen and active military, first responders, and service canines. Now, therefore, we, the Board of Selectmen of the town of Madison, do hereby proclaim September 4th through the 11th, 2021, as a time of remembrance, volunteerism, and community spirit pride.
Okay, and just in terms of comment, this, I encourage everybody to go to the Exchange Club website to purchase a flag. They're $40 each. And I think this is going to be a great display just to obviously help all us commemorate and reflect on the events of 20 years ago. Any other board comments? No? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And thank you to the Exchange Club for all the work you're putting into this commemoration ceremony. Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda is discuss and take action, some more proclamations. Discuss and take action to approve proclamations honoring Eagle Scouts, and I'll go ahead and read it. Can I get a,
So moved.
okay?
Second.
Okay, great. Whereas the Board of Selectmen of the Town of Madison hereby proudly acknowledges the outstanding award of Eagle Scout to a member of the Boy Scouts in America. Whereas throughout his commitment to community with a dedication to purpose and a commitment to a high level of leadership excellence worthy of acclamation and praise by this board and the entire community. Whereas the board gratefully recognizes the tremendous efforts of this young man, it is with great pride that the board officially extends their congratulations to this newly awarded Eagle Scout and wishes him all the best of luck in his future endeavors. Furthermore, that by the powers vested in the Board of Selectmen by the state of Connecticut and the Madison Charter, we, the members of this board, hereby unanimously acknowledge the scouting achievements of Eric Bernard, Alex Black, and Rocky Mayer, done this 30th day of August, 2021 in the town of Madison on behalf of the Board of Selectmen. Great. And congratulations to these Eagle Scouts. Unfortunately, the hurricane or tropical storm Henri disrupted their ceremony. So it will be to be coming, but we will certainly get the proclamations over to the Scouts and hopefully get that rescheduled. So all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, great. All right, moving on. Item number 9 on the agenda, we have a presentation from the Hope Partnership Caleb Foundation regarding the Wellington at Madison, which involves an affordable housing project that's been started here in Madison, and they have a current application pending for a tax abatement made to the town. So I'd like to welcome representatives from the Hope Partnership and the Caleb Foundation to talk through. They came and talked to us, you may have recall, about 6 months ago, just to kind of start a discussion about the project. Now they've done a lot of work and come back with more specifics in terms of what they're requesting in terms of the town's assistance in financing this project. So I will turn it over to Elizabeth Torres from the Hope Partnership, please.
Hello and good evening and happy Monday and all that good stuff. Thank you all for giving me the opportunity to share with you the great work that both the Caleb Foundation and Hope Partnership is embarking on to build affordable housing in your wonderful town. I don't know if Lauren, if there's a Tony Lyons or Calvin Price or Peter Ruse out there that they may also want to join and participate as a panelist with me. I'm not sure how this works behind the scenes. I think Lauren is like the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, she is. So.
Yeah, so, but I'm hopeful that, Peggy, I believe you were going to send along the memo and
Yep.
the
So the
many.
boards had the memo.
Okay, great.
And so I don't know if you actually have a presentation or if you just want to maybe talk through some of the highlights of the memo, you know, in terms of kind of the size, you know, the number of units, how they're going to be financed, and how the town of Madison can assist in the financing through tax abatements.
Yeah, so sure, I can definitely do that. I didn't have a formal presentation, so I apologize, but I could walk you through some of the key highlights as Peggy suggested. But before I do so, I do want to thank you, Peggy, and the staff, the town staff, because we have been received, you all have been very, very supportive and cooperative and very willing and interested in supporting this project. I've spent more time with Stacy and Bill O'Brien and Arietta from your team, kind of flushing out the details of both the project and the kind of support that we could use that from the town that could help us develop this affordable housing project. So I do want to give kudos to the staff and you all as well. So
Appreciate that.
really quickly, I'll say that our request is a two-part request. The Caleb Foundation and Hope Partnership did acquire the property at 131 Cottage Road back in February of 2020. Our two-part request is to request an exemption of taxes on the property at 131 Cottage Road, and through construction completion, and then an additional request for a 20-year tax relief on the property taxes as well.
And I know that it might be helpful. I don't know if you'd want to just talk through we had a lot of conversations internally about what is the value, what does the tax exemptions mean, right? How many units, and then relative to if these were market, like what kind of benefits are we actually granting through this tax abatement? So if you want to spend a few minutes on that, and you could share your screen if that's helpful to you.
Yeah, why don't I do that? Thank you. So can you see my no, stop sharing. Hold on one sec. Can you see my screen now?
Yep.
Okay, great. Hopefully it's the font is big enough. So yeah, let me quickly run through the project description, and then and some of the other project details, including the financing plan, and then we can get into kind of how we approached our request to you all for some assistance through the tax relief. So you all are probably familiar as to where the property is located. The property was the plan and the concept of this project was actually put together by the previous owner. Many of you might know the Dowlers. And so we acquired, as I said, the parcel from them a year ago, and pretty much are keeping the same concept and design that was originally approved by the town. So we intend to develop 34 units. The difference between our plan and the original plan is we expect to create additional affordable housing units. So of the 34 units that we intend to create, 31 of them will be set aside as affordable. And the income tiers for the families that we expect to serve are going to be as low as 25% of the area median income, but on through to well beyond 120% of the area median income. As I mentioned, we intend to develop 34 units. 20 of them will be 1 bedrooms, and 14 of them will be 2 bedrooms. And I'll just keep scrolling through my memo. And just to give you a sense of the households that we anticipate serving, their incomes will be between $16,275 a year to $49,440 a year for the 31 units that are going to be deed restricted affordable. And you'll also note on the memo by income band how much we anticipate residents will be paying for rent. So yes, rents will range from $454 per month right on through to $2,060 a month, depending upon what income band the households fall into.
And I know one just real quick, one thing we had talked about the income qualification, that you felt very confident that, given kind of the socioeconomic profile of Madison, that you still felt confident you would be able to get those units filled quickly.
Exactly. And again, I wish I could rely on my colleagues from Hope Partnership to chime on in. They're really the entity that has the relationships in the shoreline area, and in fact have developed other affordable housing projects in surrounding Madison. And my understanding is that they They have not had an issue renting up any of the affordable units that they've created in that area. In fact, have waiting lists of folks that are really are waiting for their turn to live in one of the developments that they've created.
Elizabeth, I see Cal Price on. It's under Nora Price. Should we move?
Yeah, he
Cal
was
over?
off and then he dropped off twice. He's back on now. I've tried to move him over. So, Carol, if you can hear me, you're gonna have to accept being moved over. Because it's not letting me just move him automatically.
Well, hopefully he can chime on in. We'll keep going. As you can imagine, it takes an enormous amount of funding to make these types of projects, to create these types of projects. Over the past, year and a half, we've been taking on several pre-development activities, working with our architect to finalize our plans, get them to a place where we can actually get bids from contractors. And so we have developed a cost estimate for the creation of this project. We expect it's going to cost probably well over this $11.4 million in various cost. And the good news is that we have a financing plan in place to obtain the funding that we need to make this project a reality. Of the $11.4 million of sources we need, I wish we could say there's one source of funding that we can go after to provide us the dollars that we need, but that's not the case. You see the list. We will have to apply apply for the 4% LIHTC low-income housing tax credit program and the state historic tax credits to support this project. Those two sources of funding are non-competitive sources and funding sources that are available to the project as long as we meet certain criteria. So that's actually good news, and that 27% of the total funding that we need is a source that we know we can depend on and is not competitive. Moving on down to the state of Connecticut funding, and I'll skip over to the CHAFA HTCC, which is the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority, the Housing Tax Credit Contribution Program. Those two sources of funding are competitive, and applications have been submitted to the public agencies for those dollars, and we're still waiting to hear back. The other funding for the project has already been committed. So yes, the Neighborhood Assistance Act program in the amount of $150,000, the funding from the Federal Home Loan Bank of Boston in the amount of $650,000, and a mortgage from the Guilford Savings Bank for $2 million. And in my memo, I described each one of the funding sources and kind of where we were and the status of each one of them. Provide a lot of detail about kind of the types of units we're going to build, the households we intend to serve, the rents that each household will pay, and the detail regarding the amount of annual revenue we anticipate generating through the project. And then I'll just share really quickly kind of our approach to requesting the real estate tax relief that we're requesting. So one of the things I'll note, and you know this already, but the town doesn't have a tax deferment or abatement program to support its affordable housing projects. There's no policy as I understand it. So having said that, we had to really think through the different methods that we could use to really justify our request. And so there are different methods that municipalities use across the state to determine the tax benefits for affordable housing projects. There are some towns that use the calculation of 10% of the effective gross income of the project to determine the taxes. When we did the math, taking into consideration the amount of revenue that we anticipated generating, you could see here that using this method, 10% of the gross effective income would be $36,564, and that would result in a per unit tax liability of $1,075, $36,564,000 a year. Another method we use is we actually did some research on other affordable housing projects that are near the town of Madison that were provided with a tax benefit, tax relief from the municipalities that they were working in. And so what we did was we took an average. We took the 3 projects that we knew of. There's one in Old Saybrook, there's one in Essex, and there's one in Guilford. And we basically said, okay, what's the taxes, what's the number of units, determine the per unit tax liability, and then added them together and reached this average of $1,119.12, which would actually should have noted what it represented, but really quickly do the math, which would represent a tax liability of $38,050 if we were to use the average of the 3 projects that we know have a tax abatement from the municipalities that they're located in. Then the third option that we sort of considered and decided on was an assessment deferral. So what I shared with the town and the staff was an appraisal that we had commissioned that valued the as completed value of these 34 units, 31 of which would be affordable, value the property at $3.5 million. 70% of that would represent the assessment, which would be $2,450,000. And if you multiply your mill rate, the tax liability would be $69,457. So on a per unit basis, if we all agree that the 3.5 valuation is correct, our tax liability without any benefit or relief from the town would be $2,042.
And just so I real quickly apologize, but just when you talk about the appraisal, that takes into account the fact that there's affordable units. That's not a full market value appraisal. That is assuming there are affordable units in it. Yeah.
That's a very good point. Yes.
Yeah.
So 2042, a tax liability of nearly $70,000 was far more than what the project could afford and be sustainable. So we did an assessment of, okay, well, what would be a realistic and fair tax liability for this project, and we used an assessment deferral of 45.5%, which would result in an assessment, a pretty significant reduction in the assessment of the property. And so I won't go through it, but if you do the math, based on a $1.595 million assessment, multiplying your mill rate, the tax liability would be $45,220, which represents $1,330 per unit. And that of the 3 approaches that we took a look at, that this approach would would garner the town the highest per unit tax liability. And what we're requesting that the taxes be set at this $1,330 per unit.
And just so I understand too, that it doesn't matter how big the unit is, or are you looking at, that's just a hypothetical per unit? Because you're looking for a percentage rather than an actual fixed dollar amount, right?
Well, we're looking at an assessment deferral percentage of 45.57%. So we're not really looking at, this is an average.
Right. Okay.
The per unit tax liability, the average tax liability. We're not asking for the taxes to remain flat for any period of time. We want to be good neighbors. We want to contribute. And so what we're proposing is that the initial year one, the first year that we're in operations, that the tax liability be set at this $45,220. And then every year after that, the taxes will be increased annually by 3%. So in year one, the taxes would be $45,220, but by year 20, the taxes will be $76,984. So in the end, if in fact the town granted our project this 20-year tax relief, it would represent a $651,000 really contribution to the project.
I will make just one comment. Our mill rate is actually 28.85, I think. Which I know when we went through this before, I don't think any of us caught that. So, but I guess if we're looking at this from a percentage standpoint and not on the, sorry, somebody's trying to. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
Oh no, that's okay.
Comments.
Oh, there you go. You popped in now. And we can't hear you.
Cal, if that's you, we can't hear you.
So you're on muted still. So unfortunately, we can't hear what you're saying. So maybe just real quickly, just for the board's benefit, I mean, I think tonight the idea was to talk through, the requests that they're making, and explain a little bit the logic behind it and how it fits into the bigger picture and how critical, obviously, this is for them from a financing standpoint to get resolved soon. And then I think we as a board need to talk about what approach we want to take, because this is the first time that we've granted these types of abatements for a rental property. So it's a little different. Everything else we have is fee simple or condo based types of affordable units. So and so we need to kind of decide what, this will kind of perhaps establish how we're doing this in the future for other projects if we have more in town. And so, we can talk about that a little bit. And then the idea would be in September, ideally, they would like us to move forward, make a choice, pick a path. And then this would get sent to the Board of Finance and then to a town meeting. I'm trying to recall now, I think. And so obviously, because of that process, they want us to get this moving as quickly as possible. The other thing I would point out is that the kind of forgiveness for the first year is something we're still looking into, if that is even an option, because the tax bills have already been sent. And so it gets a little complicated with the tax collector and what that would look like and whether or not the ordinance allows that. I guess it does kind of allow it, but we don't know all the specifics of that yet. So we would need to look into that. And that's something that we would come back to you in September about as well. So with that, maybe I can open it up for questions. From board members, if you have any questions.
Peggy, I'll start out. I'm not sure whether this is a question for Ms. Torres or for legal counsel. I'm trying to understand if for some reason this organization sells the property, does the tax relief automatically pass on to the next owner?
That's a good question. I think it does, because I think it has to do with it might be deed restriction in terms of the actual owner of the buying entity of the property. So that is a deed restriction, but that's something we'd have to get clarified from council. I don't know that for sure off the top of my head. But it's an easy one to find out. And I don't know if Elizabeth, if you know that, but I'm assuming it's a deed restriction.
Yeah, so
that
what I can share with you is that it's atypical for nonprofit organizations like the foundation, the Caleb Foundation and Hope Partnership to embark on this type of project, secure the financing that comes with it, usually a sometimes 20, 30-year affordability kind of restriction, only to turn around and sell it. That's usually not what happens. And the Caleb Foundation has been doing this work since 1992, and they own and manage 1,800 units across Connecticut, New Hampshire, and Maine. And so this is the work that they do. So it's highly unlikely that either nonprofit would be interested in selling. But I don't know the answer to that particular question. So,
and I think also just the nature of the financing is highly dependent on it staying that way. There's going to have to, how that's
Probably.
done, whether it's through, purchase and sale agreements, deed restrictions, whatever, there's got to be a lot of handcuffs to keeping this affordable property for a long time.
oh yes, absolutely.
Elizabeth, thank you for all of the information and for coming back. I think the first time you presented, we were excited to see this project come before us and excited to participate in moving it forward quickly. And I think I'll go out on a limb and say that it's still the mood of the board. You've got some years 1 through 3, and then 4, and out. In your cash flows, you've got 2024 as the first year of full operation. What has to happen on our end for you to hold that timeline? What are the milestones that we have to hit?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So, when we apply to the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority for our tax credits, we need to have the tax agreement with the town in place. It's one way to when we work with CHFA and then ultimately an investor that buys those tax credits, they want some assurances that certain expenses, right, including the taxes, can be justified and are reasonable. And so to give both CHFA and our investor and syndicator some I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but some confidence that we're going to be able to pay our bills, including our taxes, right up front is important to our project, and we'll ensure that we're going to we'll not only get awarded the credits, but we'll also be able to incentivize an investor to invest in our project. So that's the first piece of it and how you can be helpful. 2024 seems like seems far away, but it takes a long time to secure the financing that we need and then to close with our financiers. So, if all goes well and I can look into my crystal ball, I'm hoping that by the end of next year, end of 2022, we'll have all of our financing committed and be in a position to start construction. And then construction is going to take 12 months, right? So that's 2023. We expect to, have shovels in the ground and be completing the project toward the end of 2023. with, and then becoming operational in 2024. So that's kind of what needs to take place.
Right. Your model, which uses a derivative of the appraised and assessed value, do you then affix a straight 3% onto it, or are you allowing for the property to be revalued the way all other properties in Madison are revalued?
Yeah, so not only is our request that the tax liability be set at, the 45% of the, the assessed value, we are asking that the agreement specifically state that the taxes will go up for 3% every year, making it a 20-year tax deal.
And then would you expect at the end of the 20 years that there would be a reconciliation to the property in the next, whatever the next townwide reassessment is, that the property would then be subject to the market prices?
Correct.
Okay, so I mean, and I don't object to that as an approach. I just think it's worth calling out that we would be putting you on a fixed schedule, and of course, you're looking for some certainty in your expenses in your out years. So it's understandable that you've asked for it that way, but it's a little bit of a new concept for us.
Okay.
Since somebody else is talking, I just one other thing, and you've already done a good job with this, but since we're talking about it again, if you could just maybe comment on the human side of this, the people that you're looking to create space for, and their value to us as a community. And again, I know that you've already done this, but we'll give you another chance to say it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And so I wish I would have had the data kind of in front of me, but what we know there are many. Oh, Calvin's trying to chime in and save me, but I'll keep going. What we do know is that there are a lot of people, right, that work in Madison and can't afford to live in Madison. And so we're creating housing to help support the blue collar workers that already
Liz, I'm unmuted. Can they hear me?
Yeah, you sound like a robot. So it's probably going to be that single mom that works at the local coffee shop, or maybe it might be an administrative person that works at the Board of Education. It's hard. But we are creating workforce housing for households that work in Madison that cannot afford to live there, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Poor Cal. Cal, we can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Unfortunately, it's still cutting in and out. I mean, you will have an opportunity at our next meeting to join us, and Calvin, to just weigh in a little bit more. As I said, this is kind of a step one, and the next step would be the board would maybe take action on this. So tonight is for questions, and I think just the comfort level that we have in terms of the request and the methodology of how they come up with it. I think you did a good job at least showing kind of how one of the dialogues we had internally is like, well, how is this compared to other projects in the state of Connecticut? Are we being super generous, or are we being like stingy, and trying to put that into perspective? And it sounds like we're slightly more generous in terms of the request that you're making, but it's not out of the realm of what other projects in the shoreline area are also receiving from other towns. And I have seen the Spencer Corners project, not inside, but driven, in that area. And it's amazing how it just kind of blends in and fits in very nicely in the community. I mean, it's a smaller project compared to this, but maybe if members of this board want an opportunity to actually tour the site, because I know I've had that opportunity, and Dave Anderson and I had been out there, I think, twice. But maybe we would set something like that up, prior to voting, if people actually wanted to go to the location for this. It's just a nice opportunity to see and understand the vision that's there and what this space looks like and things like that. So,
Yes, and
Um,
please let
I'd
us know.
I'd love an opportunity to see it if we could. I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
That'd be great. So I'll circle back with Lauren and see if we can schedule like a little site tour of the project in Spencer's Corner. So we'll try and make that happen.
well, and then also the one here in Madison, because I think board
Oh.
members here have not, they've probably driven by it a lot. It's near Dunkin' Donuts and and Salt Meadow Park.
Yeah.
But that unless people were thinking we could do both actually, but
I'd rather the Madison one, to be honest with you, if I could.
yeah, okay.
Well, no, that'd be great. We'll definitely get that scheduled. I'm making a note to myself.
And then maybe one other thought is, this was a lot to absorb, but if there's specific questions board members have, if you could submit them just in, writing, then we can get them maybe addressed, ahead of any further meeting on this so that we would be ready to move this forward in the process. That would be helpful as well. And anything else from the board here on this? No? Okay, so we'll plan on that. We'll do a site visit, continue to answer questions, and then have you back in September for hopefully an action item on making, a recommendation for this.
All right, very good. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay,
Have a good evening.
all right,
Bye-bye.
thanks. Bye-bye. Okay, all right, moving on. Discuss and take action to approve, number 10, discuss and take action to approve donations as follows. In the amount of $5,000 from Neighbor to Neighbor to fund camp scholarships, and in the amount of $2,000 from the Madison Exchange Club to fund camp scholarships.
So move.
Second, with our gratitude.
Great. All right. Yeah, we're always appreciative of this, and it's great that we continue to have organizations step up to help members of the community. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. Item number 11, discuss and take action to approve the following hires. Aaron Boucher to the position of dispatcher in the Communications and Records Department. The position is union. Rate of pay is step 4, $28.30 per hour. The position is budgeted and not requiring any appropriation of funds. This position vacancy was created due to an internal transfer. Amy DeLucia Ferry to the position of Youth Development Coordinator 1 in the Youth and Family Services Department. The position is non-union. Rate of pay is grade 5, step 3, $24.07 per hour. The position is budgeted, not requiring appropriation of funds. This position vacancy was created due to a resignation. And Tyler Haskell to the position of Deputy Emergency Management Director in the Emergency Management Department. The position is non-union. Rate of pay is $5,000 annual stipend. The position is budgeted, not requiring an appropriation of funds. This position vacancy was created due to retirement. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any questions at all on these? These are all budgeted items. No questions? I will say that Tyler is on board and got thrown into the fire with his first hurricane Henri a few weeks ago. So welcome. But welcome to all these new employees or in their new positions. All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Great. Okay. Next item on the agenda is discuss and take action to approve retaining the services of Teich Planning and Policy Group through January 31st, 2022, and to authorize the first selectman to sign an agreement to the same terms.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, great. So this is basically the consulting firm that has been advising us in land use since the departure of our town planner. We are excited that we have an accepted offer now from a woman who will be taking over the position of Director of Planning. She will be starting on September 20th, and that will come to you at our next meeting to vote on. In the meantime, I think because there's just a lot of getting up to speed, and planning and zoning in particular, it gets very busy in the fall. That the recommendation was that we continue to keep this consultant on board through the end of January until our new town planner is fully engaged, and that we have adequate resources to support the different boards and commissions that land use supports. So any further questions on that? And this is all part, I think part of, we're doing some line item transfers, within the department to cover the funds. Any more questions? And Deb is here too. I don't know, Deb, if you have anything to add?
Hi. No, not really.
Okay. But I think they've been doing a good job, actually. They've been a big help, jumping in when we need it, so. All right, so with that, I guess all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay, and then following on that, okay, Scott. Number 13, discuss and take action to approve a line item transfer request in the amount of $18,000 to fund the services of Taish Planning and Policy Group through January 31st, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, or any questions, discussion?
Oh,
Sorry.
just a quick question. The money is going to come out of planning reserve and the office staff. What does that do to the remaining balances in those accounts? Does it, how much does it deplete them?
Stacy can answer that. I can't remember. We kind of talked about it and felt it was okay for now, but Stacy?
Can you hear me?
Barely.
Barely. Can you hear me now?
Just, yeah, barely.
Okay. There's about $150,000 balance in that account.
Okay, so and my question was, are we draining this down to zero, and we're not even close. So that's good. That's really all I was interested in.
Yep. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Aye.
Great. And maybe, thank you, Deb. And then I think Stacy, you might want to stay on, and then also John and Akko. But item number 14 is discuss and take action to approve recommending to the Board of Finance the creation of a coastal resiliency reserve fund. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
I'll
Okay.
second.
Okay. All right, great. So basically this is, as we know, we have a lot of, projects in town that we're going to need to tackle, dealing with saving our shoreline and investing in infrastructure to preserve our coastal areas. And so the state allows the town to set up a coastal resiliency reserve fund specifically targeted at these types of projects. And so this would be something, it would be a Board of Finance would be the one that would create this under their rules, but we would like to recommend that they do so. And then we'll be voting on a special appropriation into the account. This actually also has the support of the Coastal Resiliency Commission. And I'm not sure, originally they were going to come to our August 23rd meeting when this was on. And I'm not sure, Lauren, if there's anybody from Coastal Resiliency here tonight. If
Graham's
Walter
on.
or Hank or Graham.
I'll see Graham.
You do?
Yep.
Okay, great. So, but I think that one of the things the commission is focusing very heavily on now is looking at top infrastructure projects. There was kind of an initial list in the plan that was done in 2016. And now they're kind of digging deeper into that list and working with our Public Works Department to prioritize and add into CIP this year some of the key kind of more urgent projects. One of them was the Garvin Point bulkhead restoration, which we received state funding for. And that was kind of, we had the press kind of event last week about that. But that's one of several projects that, that the Resiliency Commission is eager to kind of get moving forward. And so this kind of creates a special dedicated fund to tackle some of those. So I will turn it over to Graham, maybe just to talk a little bit about the work you guys are doing and why you think the fund is important.
Okay, great. Thanks, Peggy. Let me share my screen here. Let me know when you can see it.
Yep.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, everybody. It's kind of been ironic that a week ago, if the storm hadn't turned left, we might be having a much different discussion tonight than we would have. But I think we were quite lucky. So when we were formed about 2 years ago, one of the things we were tasked with doing is kind of looking at the long range. We have like a 2-year to like 30-year window. As everyone probably knows, the legislation by the state that created the need for this planning effort was mandated as to study for 20 inches of sea level rise by the year 2050. So that was the first time they actually quantified what this number was. So that made it much more concrete for a lot of people. So we were tasked, a commission was created several years ago, and there was a subcommittee of technical people. Most of them are engineers, some former town engineer staff, people who've been living in town for many generations have been very familiar with it. Myself, an engineer. So we were tasked with kind of developing a list of potential projects, which if you see the screen here, so this first page, and by no means is this comprehensive. This was all pretty much developed internally without the use of any consultants or consulting funds, just talking to people who've lived in town a long time and talking to, town engineers, staff, public works staff, and a lot of people with a lot of history in town. So, for example, some of the projects, and also the projects, the 2016 study that was done by Malone Broom through a grant that was done. I think the town got 3 towns got a grant. Milford, Madison, and Brantford got a total grant from the DEP for $100,000. So we created this initial resiliency planning document in 2016. And I think many people have seen the document. I think it's still available on the town website. And some of those projects were identified on this list, but is by no means comprehensive.
Excuse me, Graham, are you able to make it a little bit bigger?
Sure. Let me see if I can.
I'm trying to do it myself, but then it either fills up, it either gets really big or I can't see it at all.
Let me see here. Yeah. Let's see here.
Okay.
Yeah, over zoomed here, sorry.
That's what I was doing.
I usually use my iPad, which is much easier to do. Let me zoom out. Yeah, I'm zooming out slowly.
Well, and I think there'll be a lot of more conversation about these projects as we go through the budgeting and CIP process, because they're kind of pulling a lot of this together. And some of them, in order to really get them into CIP or get real numbers into CIP, we need some planning dollars for. We need to have some engineering studies done, and that's some of the money from the reserve fund would be able to be used for that.
Right. So like as I was saying, some of these projects are very conceptually designed, and we've tried to prioritize them in terms of priorities, duration, short-term, long-term, and also the costs. And we've created, just kind of ranges in order of magnitudes, but to really define some of these projects, we're going to need some consulting, engineering assistance on these projects to, put meat on the bone and dig into them. Let's see here. So.
And I think one of
Still looks kind of funny here, Graham.
I'm sorry, what?
Still looks kind of funny on our screen.
Yeah, it's kind of off to the side. It's all the way to the right. So you need to kind of drag it over. But
the money would be to kind of further vet out some of these projects, or it would be used to actually fund the projects. I'm a little confused about how this and the CIP kind of work together.
Well, this will be this will be used for planning, potentially matching funds, because the other thing is there going to be a lot of potential federal funding opportunities and state funding if this infrastructure bill finalizes. So we might be able to tap this for insurance, and it might be able to actually pay for it. I think all 3 would be on the table. Stacy, maybe you could talk a little bit about how this works. I guess I envision this as part of CIP. It's just another one of these reserve funds that we have, along with the many other ones that we've set up. So but with a little more specificity. And from what I also understand is by this fund in particular can earn interest income. That was one of the benefits of establishing this as a separate fund. So Stacy, I don't know if you want to weigh in a little bit more.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so many funds are setting, or many towns are setting up these types of funds because big expenses are coming our way. So the thought is to put money aside into a new fund that would be pretty much all the funds, all the money in there would be allocated for these types of projects. Knowing that these projects are not yet fully vetted out or identified and then vetted out. So the thought was setting up the fund, putting money aside, realizing that future dollars will be needed. So I know the committee has been hard at work, Graham, and I know there's many projects out there, but at this point, the thought was let's set up the fund, put money away, knowing that the committee is doing their due diligence. And then once the fund is established, it will be part of our CIP process. It will have separate funding mechanism or a separate bucket, so to speak, that we put money in to support these types of expenditures coming our way. If we do this special appropriation for the 500,000, the thought is it'll get the fund up and running. It can, be identified for planning or future projects coming up. And then that will go through the CIP process. So if we can get the money in there and put future projects in, even starting in year 5, knowing how CIP works, that no new projects should come in years 1 through 4, and putting the projects in year 5, at least we have a starting place to fund these upcoming projects. So that was a thought internally, how we can get this money set aside in a new fund.
I think the idea being that, there's 1 or 2 that are on more possibly like a critical recurring, and I would use the Middle Beach Island Avenue drainage issue, which has just gotten, accelerated, I think, with rains and everything. And we saw that on an earlier tropical storm earlier this summer, that once it goes into the CIP process, it may be that, the decision would be to make it not be a year 5, but we might want to pull it forward and make it year 3 with planning dollars going out the door quickly for that. So, I think that's something that the CIP would then determine, but at least there would be some funding there, because this is once again trying to take advantage of the fact that the town has a very significant undesignated fund balance right now. And so rather than just letting the money, stay in the bank, trying to at least earmark it for some things that we know we're going to have to fund and take care of. Because a lot of these, I feel like just with the continued frequency of these storms, these things are becoming, I think, more urgent, so to speak, than we might have thought even 5 years ago to tackle. Another one I would highlight is the Garnet Park bridge, which is being repaired right now, and slated has already been approved and we've gotten state funding for it. But then there's a whole road issue connecting to that bridge repair. And so trying to be more holistic about how we make some of these infrastructure improvements rather than isolating one piece of the project. It might be good to actually use some of this money to look at, some of the other issues surrounding the bridge and the road, and try to take a more holistic approach to these projects. So that's another example that might be discussed, through CIP.
Right, and you sometimes just spend some money up front so you can define what the scope of work actually is and be more cost effective. There's like rules of thumb, like the Garvin Point thing is case in point. There was an earlier study done, but it wasn't fully engineered. So the kind of numbers kicks around and the estimates float a little bit. So if you spend some money up front, you have a much better feel for what the actual problems are and how you can budget them, and then for capital improvements and for grants. And if we can, and as Peggy was saying, if we can, in fact, get some plans and get some shovel-ready projects, if there's grant money available, we'll be able to move faster. Even if we don't have fully developed plans, we can have a, say a 30% document and, really define what the scope of work is so we can move much quicker.
So do we have a list of projects that we're imagining will be this $500,000 will be applied to, or are we imagining that these projects will be coming forward soon?
Well, let me see. I mean, we have a list of potential projects. Let me see here. Let me see if I can get this going again here.
I mean, I will say some of the resiliency projects are enormous and they're not something the town could do on its own. They're going to be bigger regional or statewide things that we'd have to look to. So this is, I think the focus right now is things that would be manageable from the town standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, for example, some of them, for example, Circle Beach Road, and that's a massive undertaking. In 30 years from now, that water, at high tide, that water will be underwater at high tide if nothing changes. So in terms of what we do for that, that's a big question. But we need to plan that. What are we going to do about Circle Beach Road?
And Peggy, are you imagining that we will, or envisioning that we would deploy these funds through the CIP process?
I think so.
So this would be another reserve account within the CIP.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it's a public works project, it would just get funded out of that fund. It would still be a public works project, but it would be funded out of that reserve account.
Yeah, I think we would identify some that would go into, some of them are going to be a hybrid, right? It's just something, like I said, Garnet Park Bridge, for example, things we're going to have to do no matter what. And I think the CIP committee would make a decision about where the funding would lie. Clearly, $500,000 is not going to pay for a lot of these. These are going to be millions and millions of dollars. This is just to start the process, looking at the engineering work that needs to be done, and then also positioning us to go after grants. Because if we tried to do all this on our own, I don't think we could ever fund all of this. So my goal is to be spending some money to position us to go after as many federal and state grants as possible for these projects. Resiliency is a priority that has been stated both at the federal and state level. So I just want us to be ready.
And are you envisioning this would be a revolving account? So it's on a dollar for dollar basis, if we deplete the fund $100,000 in year one, that we would replenish it in year two with $100,000?
No, I think this is going to be like what we do with every CIP request. We look at the account, we figure out what projects are related to it, how much do we think it should go into it. I think we would treat it like all the other accounts. I don't know, Stacy, if you have a different viewpoint, but I think this is just trying to get something established that's dedicated to this and helps us get the planning process going.
Okay, so what in our current processes is lacking that this is a benefit? What part of the CIP isn't working for these types of projects?
I guess if I could answer that, Peggy. Yeah. So CIP, it tends to focus, I think, on things that are broken and we need to fix. But there's things in this that are, you're thinking outside the box a little about what's going to happen in the future, 10, 15, 20 years out, where it's kind of out of your usual frame of mind. You fix things as an engineer. I think what's broken, a bridge is broken, you fix the bridge, but you're not thinking, Garnet Park Road, you're not thinking, okay, in 10 years from now or 15 years from now, this is going to be overtopped at a high tide. So you need to think in terms of, outside the box in that context.
So, I agree. I think as a mindset, the approach is spot on. I'm just trying to figure out, so lacking this process, Graham, if CRC came to us and said, hey, we really think that this is a project that needs to be moved forward with a priority, we'd like you to selectively ignore the year 5 rule. It feels like we've got the funding mechanisms in place to move your project to the head of the line and then to apply a funding source to it already. So I think the idea that we're creating a mindset here of thinking out over the horizon and thinking proactively is 100% spot on. I'm just trying to figure out what about our current process isn't serving that need.
Well, I guess I would say we don't have any actual funds. So this is, we as, volunteers have been developing these lists, but we don't really have any ability to engineer them. And also we need consultants to maybe also help us think outside the box. That there's the person who wrote the report is available, and we've been talking to him about possibly coming in and providing some consulting, assistance to us to start, planning and, what the future holds.
Well, and I think also that it just gets into this, everything's kind of battling for the same dollars, right? So this does at least earmark certain dollars for this specific need. I think it also positions us better for future grant requests to have this. I mean, this is something the state is actually promoting that we should do. And so it might position us better to receive federal or state matching funds for potential grants. So I think all the things that we can do, to show that we are making the investments necessary to protect our coastline, I think is going to be viewed favorably. So, I mean, the bottom line is you can move money out of this back through going through boards. We do that all the time. So, but I just think it more is sending a strong signal that these are important projects. We have, for example, that drainage thing issue isn't in CIP, but we've known about it for years. Right. So, and there's other projects on that coastal resiliency list. There's issues in town, flooding issues, things like that aren't on CIP. So I think this allows us to kind of zero in on these specific things and make them as important as some of the other, improvement projects that we have in CIP.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a CIP member, at the end of the day, this is, looking longer range, right? We're looking longer than 5 years. We have sort of the, the boundaries of a 5-year capital project program, and this is looking much farther than that.
Well, and my intention is to actually advocate and roll out a 10-year planning process. We started doing that based on the facility study. Bill McMinn now has all the town facilities in a 10-year plan. So we have a 5-year capital plan, but we should have a 10-year project plan. And so, because what I've found is things get forgotten, or if they're not, because CIP has this cash flow component to it, things end up not in there. You're trying to juggle between year 1 and year 5, and you're looking at cash flows and you're, looking at financing, but then things don't make it on that list and they get forgotten. And I think we need a 10-year plan for, and I've asked Public Works to start putting that together so that we have a similar 10-year outlook for infrastructure and roads. And so it's not tied to the funding, but it's at least we understand what's coming up. And,
Right. Yeah. That's good. I love that.
And Scott, I think we're all agreeing that this is a worthwhile perspective to bring forward. I'm just trying to imagine a scenario. Peggy, I'll use the drainage, right? So you come to us and say, "Listen, guys, I know that it wasn't on the CIP, but this is really a priority. I want to slot this capital project into year 1 with planning dollars, and then we've got an estimate of X, and I want to earmark the funds for that." I'm trying to figure out how we as a board or even the CIP would say, "No, we're not going to do that." There's nothing procedurally that stops us from doing that.
No, but once again, we have special accounts for fire trucks. We have it for a fleet. It's just these are just creating another special reserve account for specific infrastructure issues. That's all, so that it gets the I would say the prominence that it needs and focus that it needs. And then as I said, I think the more we take these measures, the better we position ourselves to also go after other funds, so the town doesn't have to pay for everything. And Stacy, correct me if I'm wrong. Can we generate interest income on other reserve accounts?
Sorry, I was talking before, but you guys couldn't hear me. So yeah, a couple things. I agree with the CNRE competition. You know, there's a lot of items in there. And to pull this aside and focus this on this purpose, I believe is a good idea. I've talked to many towns in, especially Branford, who actually worked with the state to get approval for this type of reserve fund. And the big thing that the state is offering, if you do put funds in this type of reserve fund, we can invest in higher interest earning on our cash in that account. So that is a huge plus. Right now, we have very limited investment options with our general fund or capital cash balances. But if we do put it into this type of reserve fund, we can invest pretty much similar to our pension, where we have larger options in higher interest rates. So my thought is, and I've been presenting this to the Board of Finance probably for the last 6 months, to put money aside into this fund for this bigger plan. I know we have the commission who came up with this bigger plan, but if we put this money in there, then we could follow their lead and kind of fund that going forward. So I do see this outside of the regular CNRE, which Scott and Bruce, Aaron, you know, which will still be within CIP. However, it will have its own little bucket and kind of focus on what the committee comes up with as far as projects.
Our first order of business, Stace, is we're going to make sure we put a reserve in for your new microphone. Okay.
Can you hear me? Is this better?
SuckyMicrophone.com.
Okay, can you hear me now? All I'm saying
Yeah,
is,
you're fine. We can kind of hear you.
okay, if we put money in a separate reserve, we definitely can earn more interest earnings on these funds, and then we can focus on the plan that the commission is presenting to us moving forward through the CIP process.
So, you know, and once again, this would be coming out of the Board of Finance. So we're just making a recommendation to them tonight. And so they'll be having, I'm sure, an active discussion about the merits of this relative to the CIP process and everything as well. So any other questions or concerns? Or
I just have a question, just out of curiosity. I don't know if it's something you can answer, Stacy and Peggy, but are there other types of things that would be appropriate for this type of fund, setting up this type of fund that you foresee going forward?
Can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My face is right up to the screen. Thank God my camera's not on.
Just quiet, Stace. That's all. It's no big deal.
There have been talk about like field renovations for like strong field, like the, you know, those types of things. But as of right now, this one's really important just because of all the activity that's going on at the State Department as far as interest earnings, and this is a really big deal. And you know, there was even thought about the state setting up a separate investment fund so that we can earn even additional interest income on these monies. So I do think it's important right now for something like this to get set up.
Okay. So are we good voting on this then? Everybody comfortable?
Yeah, I think you know, at some point down the line, we're going to have to do some definitions around the types of projects that we're thinking about for this. And the source, I don't know if the source is going to be the CRC or if it's going to be the Peggy, your office, or the Board of Selectmen in general, but we're setting aside money with a label. As of yet, I don't think we've really defined the projects that meet that label. So that, I think, is an action item for us in the near future.
I agree. I mean, I think that also they're going to be updating their coastal resiliency study. And so they'll have an opportunity, I think, to get some more specificity around, you know, what comes out of that. And maybe it has to be things that the CRC recommends to the town, you know. So with that, I guess all in favor of approving, recommending to the Board of Finance creation of a coastal resiliency reserve fund, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. Thank you. And then the next item relates to this, obviously, discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation in the amount of $500,000 to fund the coastal resiliency reserve fund pending Board of Finance and town meeting approval.
So moved.
A second.
And this is just putting a dollar amount that was kind of, what do we have? What do we think is reasonable to get planning going? And, to jumpstart something if we had to, and came up with 500. Any questions on that amount? Or Stacy, what's the balance now for undesignated funds? Because we've taken, I know, money out, but it's still pretty robust.
Yeah, so we're ending the year about 17 million. Our 10% regulation is about 8 million. We did approve 1 million to infuse into the pension, so we're still at about $7 million.
7 million that is above our regulation then. So
Correct.
Yeah, right. So, okay. Any more questions on that? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. So we look forward to you guys figuring out how we're going to spend the money from the coastal resiliency account. Graham.
Yeah, and we'll distribute. I'll send you the latest spreadsheet, Peggy, if you want to distribute to the selectmen so they can see some of the detail.
Yep.
Make
And I
sure-
know they're going to see a lot of it in CIP this year. So
Thanks,
Okay.
Graham.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, moving on. Item number 16, discuss and take action to reauthorize the Old Elm Street Historic District Study Committee through August 31st, 2023.
Moved.
Second.
Okay, and just trying to refresh what this is. This is just extending basically one of the historic district. We now have 2 historic districts in town because there was a new one set up, but and this is just extending their committee. Lauren, any other information on here that I should be?
So Thomas Boyle is on. I'm going to move him over.
Oh,
But
great.
basically,
Okay.
this is a subcommittee of the Historic District Commission.
Yeah.
And the way that it's set up, it has to be empowered by the Board of Selectmen every 24 months. So they'd like to continue their work and they need you to re-empower them.
So this is, so it's not, so it's funny, why wouldn't we have made these permanent? Is that, I mean, so it's treated like an ad hoc?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, thank you and welcome. And maybe you can,
I think you need to unmute yourself.
yep.
There we go.
There we go.
How can you hear me?
Yes, now we can. Thank you.
I'm Tom Boyle. I live at 390 Boston Post Road. We
Yeah.
have done this. We have had this committee going since about 2011 and have been working on it since that time. We originally were going to write the final report for this ourselves and found that it simply didn't work. We had to hire some outside people to do this for us. So that's why we're here. Our authorization slid at the last term. This is actually the 5th time we're asking for it to be reauthorized. And the reason it needs to be reauthorized is by state statute, it only goes for 2 years.
Oh, that's why. Okay, state statute. I apologize. That is in the memo too. So thank you. So, and obviously I don't see why we wouldn't encourage this to get completed. And this is also, I think a wonderful, important part of Madison is to continue to highlight our historic structures in town and that we have a lot of very historic areas in our community. So I think it's great that you guys are doing this. We recently completed a historic inventory of downtown also that was funded by a state grant to do that. So, so any other questions or? No? Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. And we'll, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great.
Aye.
And then also moving on to number 17, discuss and take action to formally appoint the following members. So we'll do your reappointment now to the Old Elm Street Historic District Study Committee with terms to expire August 31st, 2023. Eric Berg, Thomas Boyle, Susan Cartledge, John Lind, Carol Snow, and then alternates Eric Axberg and Peter Clement.
So moved.
Okay, in a second. All right.
Second.
Great. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great. And thank you so much for your service and for attending tonight. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. All right, great. Okay. Number 18. I guess, motion to approve the following appointments and resignations. Resignation of C. Thomas Powell from Inland Wetlands Commission. Resignation of Ken Kaminsky from the Board of Finance. Resignation of Happy Marino from the Board of Education, pending acceptance by the Board of Education on September 14th, 2021. Appointment of Margaret Newcomb to the Shellfish Commission, alternates for a term to expire January 1st, 2022. Appointment of Ernest LaCour to the ZBA alternates, for a term to expire November 1st, 2021. Appointment of Happy Marino to the Board of Finance for a term to expire November 1st, 2021. Acceptance of a resignation, pending acceptance of a resignation for the Board of Education. Appointment of Christine Maisano to the Board of Education for a term to expire 1st, 2021, pending acceptance of the resignation of Happy Marino by the Board of Education on September 14th, 2021. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Before we motion, I just have one error to correct. The appointment of Margaret Newcomb to the Shellfish Commission should be the regular commission, not the alternates.
Okay. Amended Margaret Newcomb to the Shellfish Commission for a term to expire January 1st, 2022. Not as an alternate. Okay. All right. Okay, great. Any more discussion? Just in terms of the Board of Finance and Board, it turns out there's a process the Board of Education goes through. They actually need to accept a resignation before they can, somebody can technically be officially resigned. So they didn't meet before our meeting to do that. So that's why there's kind of the language in there in terms of pending. But that will happen September 14th. So, okay, all in favor? Say aye.
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 Okay, great. Thank you. All right, number, let me see. Oh my goodness, where are we? I think we are on
19.
review of potential referendum projects. I'll keep this really quick since we've obviously got a lot of, and this was just a quick one-liner, just to give the public a status of, we've been working since our meeting in July to talk about the 3 different referendum projects that we're kind of trying to move forward with. The school renewal plan, we're still in negotiations on the purchase and sale agreement for the site of the new elementary school, but we're hoping that will be resolved here in the next week or two, and that would come to the Board of Selectmen in September. The school is working, Stacy's department is working very much on the project cost projections. And that's all in process, and they're getting the cash flows organized and trying to finalize a lot of the numbers. The Board of Ed is anticipating coming to us in September with kind of the overall final details of the school renewal plan that would include cost estimates as well as just the overall footprint. Because I think when they had presented to us, the site of the new school was kind of up for discussion. And then they're obviously working on their next steps and for their rollout of the communications plan, as well as, looking at what their options would be for any closed facilities as part of that plan. On Academy, I actually toured Academy for a second time today with Colliers, as well as some town staff who may end up being in that building. And it was kind of good to look at the space in fresh light, because it had been a while since I've been in there. They're updating the project costs, given it's 2 years later, and there might be some slight changes to the plan. And the Beach and Rec Department has been working hard to get a little more detail around programming needs and plans for the building. And the Beach and Recreation is also going to be launching just an overall community survey on this, I think in September. So not just focused on Academy, but also more broadly about what the town wants from a programming standpoint. Beach and Rec is also putting a staffing profile together for the building. So these will be questions that we can, the public will have answers to. And then we're looking at how we kind of get this needs assessment analysis done. And then finally on Island Avenue, we are pulling together some information and getting, we'll be sending a due diligence list, a letter of intent, and a draft sale agreement to OLM Prep. In the meantime, Planning and Zoning is meeting later this week for their review, and it's will hopefully go on the agenda for the Board of Finance and on September 15th. And then Town Council is working on deed restrictions. So no major announcements, just showing you what the project, progress is on these projects. Any questions from the board?
A couple on Academy. We had quite a bit of work done in the 2018-2019 timeframe, culminating in a community center presentation. Are you now massaging that proposal and modifying it to include some other things, or are you just simply refreshing that plan?
Well, we're refreshing that plan for project costs. And then the only change is, as I talked about last month, is we're looking at possibly moving Youth and Family Services into, it was talked about before, is having some municipal built space in there. And now, based on the conclusions of the facilities review that we just completed, we know we have a space issue with Youth and Family Services, and we also have a project in CIP about that. So part of the discussion is, would it make sense for that to also be part of the Academy plan? So that's what we're kind of looking at. And it would still be plenty of municipal or community space. It would just earmark some of the square footage for Youth and Family Services. So that's what we're looking at.
Are you expecting to have any public hearings that would refresh the discussion around the space, or?
Yeah, I think the intention would be to do that. I also want to talk to, we have included the chair of what was the Academy Community Center Design Committee, which had been the original group that had put together the proposal. So we're talking about how we get that kind of public information thing going and get feedback on kind of some of the changes that might be in terms of what would be part of the Academy proposal.
On OLM or Island Avenue, more precisely, in the past, we've discussed this in the context of a referendum in February, and this isn't the place for it now, but I think in a future meeting, I'd like us to talk about moving this forward, disconnected from a school referendum and handling it through a town meeting as it is allowed in the town charter. So I would offer that up as a future discussion item for this board.
I think that will be certainly part of the discussion, because we have to make decisions on the timeline for all three of these. They're all different projects with different hurdles and different, I think we just keep, the goal now is to keep everything moving forward. And then there's going to be a point in time where the board is going to have to kind of sit down, put a stake in the ground in terms of what we envision for referendums for each of these and the process for them. So I think right now, my goal is just to kind of keep them all moving forward and getting progress on them. But absolutely, that'll be another board discussion. Any other questions? No? Okay, great. All right, moving on. Discuss and take action to set a public hearing to solicit comment on an ethics code ordinance.
So moved.
A second.
Second.
Okay, so this is basically, I know this has been kind of an ongoing discussion topic that always seems to end up at the bottom of the agenda, and then we're tired by the time we get to it. So because it's a weighty topic. But I think, I think it was in July that we had our new town council kind of come forward with a recommendation of, some changes based on Aaron and mine and Aaron's input on what we had learned when we met with Guilford. And that she had suggested to the board, and I think we had agreed that that was the way to move forward, was to make this an ordinance rather than just a policy, a Board of Selectmen policy. And so included in that is pretty much a recommendation for the ethics code ordinance. And so the next step in this process would be to send it to public hearing, and then the board would either amend or adopt, the ordinance, depending on the public hearing.
So I think I want to just clarify, we are only proposing an ethics commission that would hear complaints or concerns about elected or appointed officials.
No, I mean, I think it's because anybody is subject to this, including contractors and
okay, so the document specifically
yeah.
calls out that this is intended for town officials, and then goes on to define what town officials are, which is us, among other people.
They also, well, and I'll let we do have, unfortunately, Carrie could not be here tonight, but we do have Joe from Murta Kalina here with us to join us. And I got to pull up the ordinance. I haven't looked at this in a while, so.
Yes, if I may, good evening, First Selectwoman Lyons, members of the board. So I'm Joe Shareko, I'm Carrie Olson's associate, and I can speak to that. So the operative statute 7-148H does contemplate that the Ethics Commission would hear complaints about employees as well as officials or officers. And furthermore, the General Powers Statute does permit you as the legislative body to create an ethical code of conduct, and encompass within that you can investigate complaints about volunteers as well as contractors. So it is all inclusive in that regard.
Okay.
And does it cover committees and sort of any volunteer associated with the town, Joe?
I believe so. I don't know if it would go beyond the actual committees, but my read of it is it does mention volunteers, and certainly you could amend it as you see fit, depending on what the town typically would be contemplating here. And it is a business decision on your part as to whether when it mentions the appropriate authority as being the enforcement mechanism, whether you want that to be the Board of Selectmen itself, or if you want it to be the commission. The Board of Selectmen itself may be problematic if the subject of the investigation is the board or a member on the board. So these are just things to consider.
So, Joe, I think my concern is that the many of the consumers of this document and ordinance are going to be legal lay people, right? That they're going to read this in plain English, and I think that we should put some sort of preamble or something in very simple terms. These are the people that are covered. These are this is the process. This is, how we're going to handle it. For instance, these are not going to be public meetings, right? These are going to be reported confidentially. That confidentiality is going to be maintained. So it will be different than this meeting and this board where we do everything out in the open. And then the document itself, I'm confused because it says twice that it is for the officials in town. And then it goes on to define different groups of people, including officials.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're expecting it to cover a broader range, then we need to figure that language out.
Certainly.
So, Bruce, why do you have then some suggestions then that you want to, in the document? I mean, because this was sent out like a month ago. So are there specific definitions?
Well, we talked a month ago that this document, we identified some of these types of problems, and I expected this draft would have those issues.
Well, no, with the last meeting we had decided that we were going to go forward with an ordinance. And so she actually had made this into an ordinance. And then this was more of a review of the draft ordinance. So, you can go through and highlight areas. I think it'd be just helpful though afterwards if you have specific like definitional changes that you want or something like that to send them directly to the attorneys.
Yeah, sure. I would say at the highest level, a preamble in plain English that describes it so that people aren't guessing is good. The document jumps around. It talks about a board of ethics versus an ethics commission. So the language isn't consistent in the document. That should probably get cleaned up.
Can we just send this detailed information though, Bruce, directly to the folks to have them clean it up?
Yeah, we can. We can.
So I'm just thinking process here. So that's all. I think then if we were going to have some more revisions, we probably shouldn't be talking about setting a public hearing. That's all. Because if we're going to set a public hearing date, we would need to have this document finalized.
Yeah. So that I think that's a valid concern. Maybe the question is, if we have faith that we can have a document that is in the spirit of what I think we're all thinking, which is that we want this to be for anybody conducting business with or on behalf of the town of Madison would be subject to this. If we have faith that that document can be done rather quickly, we can set in motion the public hearing notices.
Well, because I did ask about that. According to Carrie, because I spoke to her about this, because I just said if people are going to have specific changes, which you do, that you want in the document, she said that we need to have, by the time we actually post the notice, the document has to be final. So I don't know what the timeline of that would be. So just to clarify, because I figured, I know this keeps getting dropped to the bottom of the list. So, that there might be some specific changes that people would want. Joe or Lauren, how much time would that give? If we were going to pick a hearing date, we have to give how many days notice for that public hearing?
It's 10 days notice in the newspaper.
10 days notice. Okay.
And that's, considering that we have to do it in the source, it might end up being more than 10 days because the source is only published on Thursdays.
Right. Okay. So most likely then, we'd have to set a hearing date pretty far out to account for the turning around the document a few times, right?
Well, if we have to have the final version ready, I don't think this document as we've received it is really ready for a public debate. I don't think there's a lot of substantial changes to it. These are really sort of editorial.
Okay. So why don't we then gather some of those now and then also by email, and then we'll plan on the next meeting, then voting and setting the public hearing. Does that make sense?
That makes sense on my end.
Okay. And so go ahead, Aaron, you had some comments?
I just had a couple of questions because Joe's available here. How does the Freedom of Information Act work with this document as far as, are these things exempted from the act as far as the requirement to disclose, or that they're public documents as far as the meetings themselves, and then any documents that are produced by the actual commission? Are those FOIable, or are those exempted from that?
That is a great question. And the statute that is incorporated in 7148H that speaks to this is 1-82A. And it specifically exempts and makes confidential any complaints unless and until there's a probable cause finding. So once there's a probable cause finding, it is FOIable, and it in fact should become public. But up until that point, it is essentially exempted.
Okay.
Confidential.
So this ordinance then has a mechanism for dismissal if probable cause isn't found.
Correct.
Okay. And then the other question I had was, would there be another, I don't know what the proper term is, would it be a policy or a procedure that would support this ordinance as far as getting more specific about procedures, such as, for example, how are meetings held, that they're not open to the public, like those types of things that are too nitty gritty for the ordinance, I would imagine. Would we have a separate document for that, or would the commission develop its own? Is that what would happen?
Yes, I think the latter would be the best option. You could give the commission their own, purview over their policies and procedures, and they can certainly create a policy or policies for that matter. But the ordinance really just gives this enforcement, it gives it teeth in terms of enforcement, because if it's violated as an ordinance, you can, treat it as you can penalize under the ordinances themselves.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments or changes? So it sounds like a cleanup of, commission versus, and then just kind of identifying the, who is included in this ordinance and who it applies to, better language around that. And then this kind of introduction, I guess, so to speak, is.
So do we want to table this? This is a take action item. Do we?
Oh, yeah, I guess we have to formally table it. Or I got to withdraw the motion, right, to discuss and take action.
No, I think we can just table it. I'll just move the table until we have the draft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, essentially continuing it. Yep.
I think we lost Peggy.
Yeah.
He
He looks very intense there.
I think she had something very important to say, clearly.
I'm nervous.
Well, I'm very excited that we're moving forward on this, and obviously after the public hearing, we may have to work on the language a little bit more, but I feel like we have some good momentum here and a very good document for the public to react to.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think this is a really good step. I think we're moving in a positive direction. I think all of us will contribute, but we'll get there.
Lauren, I've got a text from Peggy saying she got booted off.
I'm back.
Oh, you're back.
I don't know what happened. So that was weird. I just got frozen and kicked off. Okay, so anyways,
It was a great facial.
Yeah.
We had a great facial, like,
Really? Dr. Evil in Austin Powers.
I thought maybe you guys would have gotten through the rest of the agenda in that 1 minute and then we could wrap this up.
Trust me, we hoped.
All right, so we tabled that with a commitment. We're voting at the next meeting on this to send it public hearing.
Very
whatever
good.
the final document is. Okay. Next item on the agenda is discuss and take action to approve a charge of the ad hoc marijuana legalization advisory committee. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And second, okay. So basically, this is a draft charge that we had presented at our last meeting and talked about extensively. I don't think there had been any recommended changes to it. And so I don't know if we need to discuss the charge further.
You had some thoughts, Al.
Yeah, I suggested some changes.
No, this is the marijuana one, Al.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you had done the other one, I think,
ERP.
right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. This one, we kind of, I think, you know, if everybody's good with this, so we just go forward. I mean, I know that there's going to be some conversations about, which I'm happy to talk about at our next meeting, about trying to do some sort of preventative or moratorium steps the board could take while the committee comes up with the recommendations, but we can talk about that at our next meeting. So all in favor, say aye.
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 I can't actually see it on my screen, but I know there was a point that was brought up about the composition of the committee. Is that in here?
No, this is that was on the ARP funding. We're talking about marijuana committee.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the marijuana one. So all in favor of approving the charge? I think there was like very little discussion on the original charge, so we're good. All in favor?
Aye.
Say aye. Okay. All right. So we'll have to get that moving. If there's anybody, members of the public, take note that we'll be taking applications for that. Okay, item number 22, discuss and take action to approve round 3 ARP funding schedule in an amount not to exceed $282,359.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
So this is basically a list of projects, the long-term, this is the final kind of list of project, the long-term recovery committee, which Bruce is a part of as well, suggested as appropriate projects for funding for ARP. Any additional funding going forward will now come out of the new committee when we set it up. So, and I, for some reason, can't pull up the list. So I don't know, Lauren, if you want to share the list, or does anybody have questions on the list? Do we need to go through the list?
I'm good.
Okay. For some reason, it keeps mirroring and I can't find the, okay. So no questions on the projects included on this. I think they're great projects, and we will just, are everybody ready to vote on this?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. Give me 1 second. I got a technical problem here that it's not letting me. Okay, why does it keep doing this? Okay, there we go. Now I have two screens, and for some reason it defaults to mirroring all the time, and it drives me nuts. Okay. All right, next item on the agenda is discuss recommended priorities and objectives for the use of ARP funding. So I think this is something that can be kind of tabled for another meeting, but I'll just spend a second on it because this is a bigger discussion about, you know, our priorities and what we would like to wait. See, let me share the screen here. And we're just going to highlight. So basically what this does is summarize kind of where we are on this, how much money we received, which was $5.3 million. We've done 3 rounds now. And this shows you a little bit kind of the buckets of where these rounds came from in terms of projects, and how much money is left for the town. And that would be kind of going to this committee. And I think one of the things that we might want to do is, and I just threw some things out there as just ideas for discussion, but maybe we can talk more extensively about this in September. I think we have like a month really before once we seat the committee to then, give them some guidance and suggestions about what we as a board feel is the right way to spend the money. And I just thought about, I think one of the aspirations would be that everybody in town feels like they benefited in some way from this, whether it's a public facility that they use a lot, or whether it's a grant that they applied for, or a service that they use that benefited, to make sure that we're having touch points throughout the community. And then I just had some ideas about focusing on whether it's sustainable infrastructure projects, health and safety, creating more resilient community, economic vibrancy. So these are just some ideas that we could put together, kind of a list of key objectives, or a theme. Some towns have done like a theme, just to kind of overall umbrella, because I think some of the advice that is coming out, from CCM and other groups is that you don't want to be everything to everybody, because otherwise it's kind of death of a thousand cuts, where you're trying to fund all these different things and you don't really get some major objectives accomplished with this, for this really once in a lifetime amount of money that the town is receiving. So like I said, this is more for, I think, future discussion when we're all kind of fresh. But it just puts into perspective about what we're talking about. And then I think for the committee, one of the other things I'd like to talk about is a recommendation that they look at setting up these grant programs, and how much money we would, that they could be allocated for these grant programs. I had raised this up a couple months ago. So it wouldn't be all the money, but we might say, take, a percentage of the 4.5 million and set it aside for grants. And then setting up a grant application process. So that was just a thought there. I don't know if anybody wants to get into this now, or should we just plan on tabling this discussion for another meeting?
I think there's a lot to digest here. I would suggest we table it.
Yep. Okay. And I think we'll just plan on tabling this for then our next meeting, and maybe people can start thinking through what they feel is the most appropriate way that the town should be spending this money. All right, so moving on then, the next item on the agenda is number 24, which is discuss and take action to approve a charge for the ad hoc ARP funding COVID Task Force Advisory Committee.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. So I know we had a bit of a discussion at our last meeting about the charge and the composition of the committee. And then I think Lauren had sent around some amendments based on some of that conversation. And I think just, I know we talked a lot about, do we want to have a lot of boards and commissions involved in this or not? And I think that my takeaway was we wanted this more to be the key boards, and then having a public representation. And, because originally we had a lot of boards and commissions having seats on this, just to make it a more manageable and focused group. So I know Al had said around a suggestion, of keeping it more of a 7-person committee. And then you'd have, a bipartisan representation from Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen, and then you'd have one from the Board of Education, just because this is primarily non-Board of Ed type funding, but it's good to have the voice of the schools in this. And then having 2 members of the public, and that would be, how we typically appoint public members. And so it would not have because obviously there's a lot of constituency groups that are benefiting from this: Youth and Family Services, Senior Services, Economic Development Commission. So I think it's one of those things, we either make it a 10-person commission or we make it a 7-person commission. And then I think, the charge needed to just be tightened up a little bit than what had been sent around, because I think it really needs to highlight the fact that, ultimately they're making a recommendation to us. And they're not actually dictating how the money's being spent. They're coming up with a plan and saying, here's what we think the right way to do is, and here how it should be managed. So just wanted some clarity. Al was adding some clarity in that. So I can share his draft, which, Al, can you share it? Because to find it in my email right now is
yeah, whether we can or can't, it's pretty simple. I identified two things I thought we should talk about. One is Peggy, in the action verb language, the draft seemed to muddle whether this committee or whether the Board of Selectmen was going to make the decision. So I took out the word determine from the ad hoc committee's charge and asked them to just identify and then recommend to us. So to me, that clarifies that this ad hoc committee is not the decision-making body. They're the research and identification body, and then they recommend their findings on to us. I think the second thing that struck me, and you sort of already said, Peggy, everything for everybody. I think the Board of Selectmen is often confronted with this vexing problem of when we form new bodies as to who should be included. And I have always found it helpful over the year to distinguish between who should have input versus who should be sitting at the table making the decisions. And I completely agree. There's lots of bodies in town that I think this ad hoc committee needs to hear from, including Youth and Family Services and Senior Services and the Economic Development Commission. I absolutely think that those groups need input. I think I also could probably identify others. It occurred to me that P&Z, Water Pollution Control Authority, the Coastal Resiliency Commission, first responders, they all have input into this process too, that I think is very, very valuable. But I'm aware that Bruce keeps reminding us, if we create unwieldy, large-sized bodies of people sitting at the table in a position where they have to come together in a consensus, that those bodies often don't work very well and they don't work very quickly. And so I respect the fact that we need to get input from a lot of these groups, but I also realize we've got to keep this process moving, and we can't let it be balkanized in the extent of having everybody who's sitting at the table wanting a piece of the action, and we're not able to get anywhere effectively. So I thought, for purposes of discussion, I would ask the Board of Selectmen to consider cutting it down to just elected officials and the 2 members of the public, a 7-member body.
And I think we had talked about at the last meeting, if I recall, that modeling this off of CIP or tri-board, right? Because that's how we kind of came to the conclusion of keeping it at the elected board level, but wanting public representation. So
I mean, honestly, the CIP model, I think, works well. So I'm supportive of that.
Aaron, I know you had some concerns.
You're on mute, Aaron.
They're not concerns. I mean, it's I think a really interesting sort of question, because I think that with regard to members of the public, I mean, the people who are on our commissions are members of the public. It's just that they have more of a specialized knowledge because they're on a committee that regularly discusses these issues. So to me, there's a value to that than just bringing in someone, from the public who may not have really any kind of involvement or knowledge, about what has been identified as the priorities by the act itself. So I understand the concern about it being, unwieldy, and I agree with that, but I also feel like we have these groups who are sort of they're in these issues, they're talking about them all the time. So why not have them be part of the process? It's just, to me, it just seems kind of foolish not to include them on the, on the committee.
So what are you advocating for, Aaron? How many folks?
Well, see, I think I can't really start with a number. I guess I would just want to think about what are the areas under the statute that we're supposed to be, that this money's.
And she's gone.
What is going on with Comcast tonight?
Okay, all in favor?
Well, Bruce, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, I think as Al said, I think that sometimes we want to make sure that we're hearing every voice. And of course, that's why we're here. So it's never wrong to hear every voice. But when we dilute the decision-making too much, it becomes that much harder to come to a consensus on what to do. So this is a bit of a departure philosophically from what we've done in the past. But I think a smaller decision-making authority that is relying on the input of various stakeholders isn't a bad model. I would definitely be in favor of that. And, maybe, I do think we need some staff. There are some technical aspects to this that will have to be learned. And so we're going to need staff to be on board. So we're going to need staff to be closely liaised to this. But maybe we do limit it to just the 3 elected boards.
I don't know. I'm uncomfortable with not including the public. I get your point, Aaron. I totally get your point about they are members of the public anyways, but I struggle with limiting the total number of folks involved in the conversation. I just think that sometimes having those extra bodies that maybe aren't as attached to the conversation is a good thing.
What group
that's an extra voice.
What group would those 3 members of the public be representing? What would they be charged? Who would they be charged with representing? Whose voice?
The public.
No, it would be 2 members of the public. So you'd have
2 members.
Yeah, so you'd have a 7-person board. Like I said, this was mirroring CIP. Also, the recommendations that are coming out both at the federal and state level is that you include members of the public as part of the review process. And I think, having somebody that is separated from the town government, the process and being on boards of commission, stuff like that, and coming in with fresh eyes. And this is going to be these are 2 individuals that we would do as we appoint to any committee. Narrow it down to 2 people who don't necessarily have any axe or stake in the game, so to speak, about the funding, that are just there as a member of the public. I think
everybody has an agenda. So I think that's kind of not necessarily, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but everybody has a reason or a,
right. But I'm just saying, once we open it up to other boards and commissions, we're just creating a much more unwieldy group, and for something that I think does need to be really efficient and organized. What charter review, which I would put this as at the level of charter. How many people are on charter review, Lauren? 5? 7? Yeah.
7.
I know we did the marijuana one, which was 10, but I feel that this isn't a particularly, critical board that has to function well and be truly bipartisan and truly, and I think by having 2 members from each board on it, it gets buy-in from the board so that you don't have conflict, where the committee is saying one thing and then it goes to our board or the Board of Finance, and, so it allows it to be so that was, I think, what we had talked about, because we wanted to make this more efficient, focused group.
So as far as, we have a board of people who aren't necessarily really knee deep in any particular issue, well, except for Board of Ed, because all they do is Board of Ed stuff, right? So then they're going to have to do research, like you said, Al, to come up with suggestions.
No, but all the boards and commissions can make recommendations. They're going to come forward.
That's what I'm asking. So the research will be basically having these other commissions and boards come forward and present whatever they think it should be. And then this commission will then vote on it and then bring it to the Board of Selectmen. And they'll present it to the Board of Selectmen, who will then vote on it. I mean,
I think this commission would basically be helping vet the projects, and people are going to come to them asking for things, setting up a process, setting up a vetting process, and then coming up with recommendations to the board about what the spending should be. And it also helps, I think, once we go to external organizations, because eventually we're going to have a lot of external groups coming to ask for money. And I think to create a priority setting, rather than putting the board in the position to have to go through all these applications, it sets up a whole process for that. And they may recommend that we outsource it to a group to vet. There's a lot here we have to research and look into about how we would do it. Because one of the issues with this is the reporting requirements are going to be quite significant on how the money's being used. And so, those are the types of things that this committee could look into. It might involve partnering with other regional groups, to hire an administrator. I know that Southeastern regional government is actually pooling together to hire an administrator to help administer this stuff. So, the committee could work with that. And so I think there's more than just looking. I don't think it's necessarily looking for projects. I think it's more, setting up a process to review and recommend, which we've been doing, I think, fairly efficiently with the long-term recovery committee. But it's, I think this was trying to make it more of an established process.
Well, and I would add that it makes it a public process. These would be noticed meetings with public discussions.
Right.
And that's certainly important, that the community sees what we're doing and has faith in what we're doing. So I don't think that we have I don't hear any disagreement that we should be forming a committee, right? I think we're all in agreement on that. We're just talking about the makeup. I'm a little bit with Aaron, I think, on the members of the public. I think that I don't know that we could point to 2 people in the community and say they speak with the voice of the community any more than any one of us.
Well, and I'm not opposed to members of the public. That was just saying, if we want to keep the number small and I had to prioritize, then I would say that there would be more value to add people who come with experience and firsthand knowledge about these particular areas of the town, which are specifically referenced in the act itself. I mean, otherwise it just seems to me we're just creating another layer. It doesn't seem as efficient to me, but I mean,
I'd like to agree with.
I see it slightly differently. I guess I don't see it as a layer. I hear your point, but I guess I see it as being inclusive and just adding another level of voice. So I see it as a good thing.
I mean, a layer is Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance. It's going to come to Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance anyway. I mean, I feel like when we go on these committees, Scott, like the Facilities Committee and the other, we're heavily dependent on someone else to give us this information because we're not in this stuff. So we can only contribute so much, I guess.
I hear you, but I think in this particular case, Aaron, like I think having that extra sort of third party voice is probably a good thing, because it's going to check and balance us in terms of how we're allocating funds. I guess I'm struggling with why we wouldn't include the public.
Well, we will, because at some point we'll be going to them and asking for permission to spend the money. These will be effectively special appropriations. And to the extent that they're not budgeted, we're going to go to the public and ask permission.
I don't think we have to go to town meeting for these. We haven't, this is a special fund. I think we go through our appropriation process, but I don't think we have to do town meeting. That's something I think we need to double check with town council on. This is like a grant, one big grant we just received, right?
So I agree. We should actually then put a fine point on that thought, Peggy.
Yeah.
What is the process to actually deploy the funds?
I mean, I will tell you that, like in my conversations with other, leaders throughout the state, a lot of them are, running this all through their office, which I don't think is necessarily the right way to do it. I think this should be a public process and so the public process is having public hearings, having public representatives of the public on the committee. I mean, we haven't been doing it, recommending any of the appropriations to town meeting that we've already done. Right. So we've accepted the grant and now this is just using money from the grant. So, but it's a fair question. But my understanding is that was never required for us to go to town meeting, but we can certainly talk about that. And that's something the board should talk about. I think when we talked about process 2 months ago, it was, Board of Selectmen, it was Long-Term Recovery Committee, Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance. And the funds are appropriate, approved because we've already have the funds. They're not in the budget. So these are outside of the budget. But I think that this process allows the public to weigh in, and that we should definitely they should have a public hearing on their recommendations. And then I would argue that we would have a public hearing on the final plan for spending the funds.
I'm at the same place Bruce is. I think Bruce was saying that the process has more credibility if there's some public members involved with this. And if that's what you said, Bruce, I'm at the same place you are. And I believe all of the other expertise in town comes to this committee through input, not through a seat at the table. So I'm very comfortable continuing to pursue the 7-member body that I guess I proposed or that was proposed at our last discussion. That was my memory of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in support as well. Shall we vote?
Yeah, we can vote. I think we should just be prepared to, this is going to be an effort spread out over a couple of years, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be getting the money over a couple of years. So probably one public hearing isn't going to be enough because just too much time will have gone by.
I would agree. And I think we might change our priorities, in January or depending on what happens with some of these referendums too, right? So, and some of the infrastructure money coming out of the federal government, we might shift paying for some things in town with those resources versus using ARP funds.
So I think we should be prepared to pivot in the future and not etch this too deeply in stone, but it gets a public process started, and I think that's a good thing.
Okay, so I guess this would be we would be making a motion to approve the charge of the a ad hoc ARP funding of his committee as amended by Al Goldberg.
So
Can you
moved.
see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so it's just slightly different from Al, but basically the same intent. So he had put only reporting back to the Board of Selectmen on 2 items on the list of what the plan needs to include, and I just moved that up to the top paragraph. So. just
Okay.
saying
You
that
did a
we're
good job,
aware of
Lauren. Thank you.
everything.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren.
Okay. All right.
Second.
All right, second. Okay, any more discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aaron, are you aye, abstain, no?
I say no.
No? Okay. Okay, all right. Well, and I think to Bruce's point, we're gonna start this process, and then if we feel it's not working well, then we can always amend the charge of the committee and change it. This is kind of a unique time, or unique opportunity for the town, so. Okay, I would like to get, in the interest of time, on number 25, table the review of building code appeals process to another meeting. I think this is an important thing the town has to think about, because we don't have a committee, or we don't have an existing building code of appeals committee. There's no place for the members of the public to appeal a decision made by the building inspector. So there is a state process that they can go through. But we don't have anything locally right now. So, but I would like to table that for another meeting. Is everybody good tabling it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Bruce, do you know the tax abatements?
I move tax abatements for $12,721.26.
Okay, so moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, great. All right, number 27, citizens' comments. Do we have anybody left on here?
No one is raising their hand.
Okay, all right, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, meeting adjourned, and it's nice starting them at 6, I will say, so we're not finishing at 9:30. So it's 8:30. So thank you, guys. I know this is a long meeting. Appreciate all the hard work, and get ready for the next one. Thanks. Bye-bye.